Ladies and gentlemen, I had planned by opening this speech by saying that Stella would be really surprised to see all this fanfare, but she wouldn't at all. She would totally be loving it. I can just imagine her going, I had to bloody die to get you all to my gig, did I? A comedian to the end. So, comedians, ladies and gentlemen, giving eulogies. If there's one thing Stella and I agreed on, it's that the principal job of the comedian, like the court jester before us, is to speak the truth. If people laugh, we're lucky. Here goes. I know what I'm supposed to say, that I'm okay and we were lucky to have had her and everyone is special and we're all irreplaceable. But let's be honest, that's crap. The truth is, I don't feel lucky. I feel robbed. And it's impolite to say, but many humans, if we're honest with ourselves, are pretty unremarkable. There are literally billions of us on the planet. Most of us dime a dozen. But you, my darling Stella, you are one of a kind. Firstly, to Stella's family, I can only say sorry. Your loss is the most devastating. No one can create a human like Stella without being an exceptional family, exceptional parents, exceptional sisters, and I thank you for sharing her with us. To her friends, what a beautiful, true friend Stella was. The day after her death, my 2-year-old looked at me and asked, "Where's my Stella?" One thing I've realised this week is that we all thought she was our Stella. That's because she loved so large. To her beloved Crip community, I tell you what, she loved you. She loved and adored you and spoke about your community like it was a warm blanket that embraced her at every turn. She was yours and you were hers. To her ABC, Channel 31, Melbourne Museum, Comedy Festival, comedian, writer and other friends, we've lost a giant, a pocket-sized giant, but one that filled every room she was in, every stage. To the activist communities, disability, education, preventing violence against women, youth, we've lost a foghorn, a true agent of real change. Who else but Stella could cut through the bullshit with a single sentence? On organised religion, I lost faith in God the day I found out there was a stairway to heaven. Boom. On euthanasia, I'm not interested in talking about dignity and death until we all have dignity in life. Boom. On the apolitical and currently in vogue so-called positive psychology movement, no amount of smiling at a flight of stairs will turn it into a ramp. Who else but Stella could sit with those, sometimes on national television, who believe that people with disabilities should be grateful because things are pretty good in Australia, and who at the extreme end think people with disabilities should not exist? What puny minds, what highly educated, well-read, well-argued, well-researched puny minds. If you can't see the hole the size of Uluru that one little cripple in red high heels and some leather pants has left today, then you cannot see anything worth seeing and you should not be listened to. As many of you know, and Kelly mentioned it before, one of the wonderful things Stella left behind was a letter to her 80-year-old self. If you haven't read it, please do. I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to imagine a world where Stella Young doesn't live to at least 80, so I've chosen to imagine the rest. Go with me. Next year, as planned, we take her debut solo comedy show on a national tour, starting in Stall, of course. I know we've got some Stall people in, and ending at the Opera House, you know. The entire tour is sold out and her reviews are glowing. One idiot describes her as brave, but she just rolls her eyes and says, "I tell you what's brave, having to deal with dickheads like you." At the after party, Stell runs into 17 gay Qantas hosties she met in the trip up. Why 17? No idea. But when Stella's around, gay men magically reproduce themselves. I like to think of it as a kind of camp compound interest. They take her to a hot new club. It has a fabulous basement, darling, but they don't notice the stairs are a bit of a problem for Stells. But don't worry, Stella grabs a lesbian leaving the club. She knows she'll know all the accessible venues within a 100k radius. It's in the handbook. And they head off to the Honey Pot. Bryce and Adam are there. They're always there for Stella. They have a few drinks, they party well into the morning, and during a particularly vigorous dance session to Wrecking Ball, Stella is midway through a pash with Ruby Rose when she falls out of her chair and breaks a few ribs. Wouldn't wear that bloody seatbelt. Again. Adam and Bryce take her to the hospital. Moments later, it's imaginary, a surgeon walks in. He's short, squat, devastatingly handsome. He takes a look at Miss Young and concludes he'll need to see her many times again. On day 3, he proposes marriage. She says, "No, but if you'll move to Melbourne, I'll consider dating you." He does. Eventually, he gives up his surgical career and becomes Stella's publicist. You know, does something useful with his life. The next year, we take Crip Tales to London. Of course, Stella is the toast of the town. One night I noticed Dawn French in the audience, the other Kim and Kanye. Stephen Fry comes a couple of times, but it's when Amy Poehler rocks up to a Saturday matinee that Stella gets really excited. Amy wants to chat to Stella after the show, but the Crip Mafia are forming a crop circle with their chairs around Stella, and no one gets past that shit. It's okay. She calls the next day. She wants to set up a US tour for Stella. Jay-Z and Beyonce bankroll it. And Stella buys a Rolls and a driver. By coincidence, the driver's Crazy Eyes from Orange is the New Black. Just 'cause. Hillary Clinton comes and says if she's ever president, she'll make Stella the Disability Commissioner of the Universe. Stella accepts in advance, of course, but only if she can do an accessibility audit of every building everywhere ever built. And Hillary says, no worries. Stella returns to Australia and frankly, she's become a bit up herself. The hot surgeon has started to complain about always playing second fiddle and wants her to pull back her career and focus on him. She tells him where the nearest accessible exit is. Stell goes on to tour nationally and internationally for many years. She makes sitcoms, feature films, she writes books, she becomes a regular on Sesame Street. In 2020, Stella is announced Australian of the Year. In 2022, she starts a new political party called The Borgen and becomes Australia's first president. By 2035, everyone has seen how well she's done with Australia, and she's running the world. Carpenters and bricklayers from all the lands rejoice. All public buildings in the world are made accessible. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. If they can't be made accessible, they're knocked down and rebuilt. When some heritage ning-nong argues that old buildings should be kept for history, Stella reminds him that the human right to access is more important than the human right to nostalgia. On that note, all the cobblestones in the world are also crushed up and made into garden gnomes. The Paralympics now includes wheelchair synchronised swimming. Everyone, able-bodied or not, has access to hovercraft wheelchairs. Of course, they're solar-powered. Stella believed in radical ideas like a round earth and climate change. Dancing at any opportunity is mandatory. Women with disabilities are no longer the group most at risk of family violence. In fact, there is no family violence. Full gender equality has been achieved. Those very, very few men still caught committing this crime are sent to the gnome factory on Christmas Island to crush the old cobblestones. In a nice twist, all refugees are sent to Stella's beloved South Yarra. Nice swap. Under Stella's presidency, the ideologies of individualism, neoliberalism and conservative die a quick and painless death, along with Dr. Phil. These ideologies tell people who face challenges that it's them who is sick rather than the society that they live in. Stella says no. All Australian number plates now say, affirmative action, not affirmations. All mothers and fathers talk to their kids about healthy and equal relationships, like Stella's mum. This happens anywhere, if you know Stella's mum, from Coles, fruit and veg, to just down the street, in the car. You know, Stella, if you did every possible thing you could think of with another person's body, you'd never get everything done. I know, Mum. Diversity audits are mandatory in all workplaces. Ramp Up is reinstated. As is funding for community television. Stella beats Waleed again. By the way, if you really want to honour Stella's legacy today, you won't eulogise her endlessly. You'll do something about it. And on that note, I have to say, Stella would be most bemused, amused and confused by some of the people who've eulogised her over the past week. With some, she would be downright ticked off. It would be inappropriate for me to name names here, but suffice to say, I'm not going to pine over it. Ironically, ladies and gentlemen, for such a brilliant wordsmith, words were not enough for Stella Young. She demanded action. When you leave here today, do an access audit on your workplace, a diversity audit, a gender audit. How about you start with, can everyone get in the building, and build on it from there? And be proud, really. Stella's favourite line was, you get proud by practising. It was tattooed on her arm. If you love Stella, you'll practice pride every single day. The Crips, the queers, the mentals, the fatsos, the weirdos, the refos, the blacks, the browns, the pink and purple polka dotted. Pride takes practice, especially if you're on the margins. Practice it daily. By the time Stella dies at 85, she's our most famous Australian ever. She leaves the world a better, brighter, fairer and far more beautiful place. And by the way, if you think I'm joking about the most famous Australian part ever, you're wrong. That girl was on a rocket to the moon. She was going there very fast, and I have absolutely no doubt that she was about to explode globally. In the truest sense of the word, she actually was special. I know, piss off, Nellsies. Stell, wherever you are, always try and think of you on that rocket. Charging around, abusing people who move too frickin' slow, ramming into their ankles accidentally. My darling Stella, you were out of this world. I just so wish you were still in it. Thank you.